the shock of people outside of Palestine when I tell them, we have all these startups and they're growing and they're doing great and we have a VC fund, goes so much further than anything I ever did with the politicians. So many young people, talented young people, that otherwise would probably leave Palestine. Now we're giving them opportunities to stay here. Technology sort of removes borders. It removes those barriers of checkpoints. It removes the barriers of all the trouble we have with imports and exports because we have the internet and we can do anything with the computer now. So that's really special. VC is so high risk and we can invest in a company and anything can happen. For example, COVID, right? And it's doing so well and then all of a sudden it's not. And so it is a business that one day you might be doing really well and ready to exit, and the next day you may have lost it
all. Welcome, Ambar, to our series. In this interview, we'll discuss about how the women representation at the top in the world of investing in less, and how you as a woman have made it there despite all the challenges, and especially in a place like Palestine, where more so it's so difficult that to in times of conflicts to be at the helm and still support founders and tell them that, okay, I am the one who can give you the capital, since you are the only one venture capital fund in Palestine. So tell me, how did you end up being here and how was your journey like?
Yeah, so thank you so much for having me. So my journey to venture capital is very unplanned. So I actually studied marketing, focused on international development, economic development, and I came to Palestine to do some work with the negotiations team. I was actually doing communications for them. And, of course, my background and my interest is in economic development, but I was doing more political development at that point. Because of things that happened, I ended up going to work for a businessman in Palestine.
Yeah.
And from that stemmed to work with entrepreneurs. And from that stemmed the fund, Ibtikar. So, it wasn't anything that, I had a lifelong dream of investing, quite the contrary, I think, but it's been incredibly rewarding. And just, I love it now. So I don't know what I would be doing otherwise.
Got it. But did you feel that moving from marketing into investing, it was a difficult road for you? Because people still have this stigma in their minds, that I really need to get an MBA, that too from an Ivy League,
Yeah.
to get into a VC fund, or maybe just to start something of my own in investing. Is that true,
Right.
or how is it for you?
So look, I do have an MBA, but I think that when definitely you need to understand numbers and you need to be able to, understand what's happening with your capital and, cap tables, et cetera. So for sure that is there. But I don't think that you should only be in finance to be an investor. And I think on the contrary, you need to have well-rounded teams that understand different aspects of business to be able to support these companies. They're not simply focused on building financials, right? I mean, there's a lot more to their businesses, and part of it is really helping them with sales strategy, marketing strategies, and so it actually does come in quite handy. I think also, especially in early stage investing, a lot of the work that we do is about people and connecting with somebody and really actually supporting them into growing and becoming that founder that they want to be. So it's all sorts of things that goes into investing, not only the finance background.
Yeah. And what are the kind of founders, now that you're into investing, what are the kind of founders that you witness in a place like Palestine? Do you feel that people are scared to start a business of their own, or they're coming out and about because technology is anyways borderless and they know that they can spread beyond Palestine? How is it that
Yeah.
you have watched out the market in Palestine?
Yeah, I think exactly what you mentioned. I think as a society, I think Palestine is still quite risk averse, right? And so probably similar to what you see in India a bit, maybe, sort of as a percentage of the population, let's say. And so, for example, I think that parents still want their kids to have be doctors, be engineers, that sort of career. And the jump that and the risk that is required to start a business and to start a tech startup is actually quite scary for many, right? And so, I think that a lot of them are going against the grain on that. Now, in terms of the development that we've seen in our entrepreneurs here in Palestine, we started Fund One in 2016. And so we've been around for quite some time. We have seen that more and more experienced founders are leaving very safe and good paying jobs in order to start their companies because they see an opportunity. And I think that is very important. It's a great development because we're seeing better, more experienced entrepreneurs. We're seeing better companies that are targeting spaces that, are not the obvious spaces because, one has been in the printing industry and has seen a problem in the printing industry. Now, that's not something that people that aren't in that industry would understand. And so we're seeing very unique opportunities because of that. So definitely it's changing, it's improving. I think even now as companies fail, because our ecosystem now has developed enough that we have even companies that failed, companies that are growing, and so the ones that are failing are actually graduating new entrepreneurs as well, and that's also very important.
Yeah, for that matter, I mean, Israel is also known as one of the top innovation hubs in the in the globe, and
Right.
people weren't aware of it until it started exporting its technology, across the globe. And I think that's how Palestinian founders are also coming about. But when I speak of that, about their market reach, how is that you are helping them as a fund to get out of Palestine and expand their horizon?
Yeah. So look, because our market is quite small, so we're about 5 million people, West Bank, Gaza, and East Jerusalem. So it's a small market. And for us as a venture capital fund, if we want those hockey stick profits, then we need to move outside of Palestine very quickly. And so very quickly, we start asking, where are you moving next, if not to start with? But also our entrepreneurs, because of that, because they realize their market is small, they start looking at the region, if not more globally, very early. And so they're benchmarking themselves to their peers in Saudi Arabia, in Jordan, in Egypt, and building products from day one that can work outside of Palestine. I think even some of them completely skipped Palestine, right? So our first company is focused on the US market. We have other companies that are focused on Latin America, et cetera. And so there's definitely a breadth of markets that we're targeting from here.
Got it. But is there some government grants also that people can get in Palestine? Because you anyways have very limited options of getting funded. And since you're the only VC funds, I'm just trying to think that how is it that founders in your region access capital?
Yeah, and that's one of the unfortunate situations is that our funding options are limited. Now the government is not offering grants. I mean, they're in a difficult economic situation themselves. And so what we have seen though is that we have bilateral donors and multilateral donors such as the World Bank coming in and playing that role. And so, for example, the World Bank has a new project now that is giving grants first at the early stages, so about $50,000 very early, but they're also co-investing with us and other investors and sort of multiplying our money through grants, which is a way also to incentivize maybe some of these foreign investors to come in and invest further. So there are some of those projects, but yeah, again, it's mostly donor led. We are seeing more and more, we are seeing Palestinians here and individuals here in Palestine taking on that role, but also Palestinians from the region and our diaspora taking on that role. And that's also very important.
Got it. And just taking a step back, how was it that when you moved to Palestine and decided to be a part of this fund? I'm sure that you might have gotten other opportunities also around the world and you would want to go
Yeah.
there. But what was that one triggering point where you decided that, okay, Palestine is where I want to be and where I want to help founders from?
Yeah. So look, as I said, I didn't come to build Ibtikar. And so I came because I wanted to help Palestine tell its story. I had my background again was in politics. I had worked for the House of Representatives in the US for a congressman, and I wanted to get the story of Palestinians and what was happening here out. I did that for a little bit with the negotiations team. But honestly, what I see now is that the message of hope and the shock of people outside of Palestine when I tell them, we have all these startups and they're growing and they're doing great and we have a VC fund,
Yeah.
that goes so much further than anything I ever did with the politicians. And I think, it's unexpected. What the media shows about Palestine is not Palestine. It's one aspect. And, I think media is always looking for the sob stories or the conflict. Whereas, there are, again, 5 million people living here that have to go on with their daily lives and need work and need opportunity. And that's what we are now creating with Ibtikar. And that's why I'm not leaving anytime soon, because I am seeing sort of the impact that we have through a fund like Ibtikar, and the impact that our companies have by growing and hiring and expanding outside of Palestine is huge. And that's what I want to be part of now.
Yeah, since you mentioned about the growth with which founders are, moving across, can you mention one or two company stories where you sourced the deal within Palestine and helped them grow from there on?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a company called Mashvisor. They're our first investment in our first fund.
Okay.
And Peter Abuzolov, who is the founder of Mashvisor, he's the CEO. He came back to Palestine from the US because he wanted to build something from here. So again, the power of that they asked for, right? He wanted to build something from Palestine. And he went to an event, a startup weekend event, was part of a team. And during that event, they came up with this idea of Mashvisor. I'm sure it's pivoted tremendously since then, but it was, data for real estate investors in the US. Months later, Peter notices that website is still getting hits, the website they built during that weekend. So he finds a co-founder, Mohammed Jabrini. He finds his technical co-founder, and they come to us for that first investment to hire the first employee. So we invested in 2016. This company now, one has broken even, is profitable, but is set to make, millions of dollars in the US market for US real estate investors. And it's all done from Palestine.
Wow.
And so that's the impact, right? It's, these hiring of so many young people, talented young people that otherwise would probably leave Palestine. Now we're giving them opportunities to stay here. So that's Mashvisor. We also have Aus Al-Nabulsi. He's from Nablus. He came to us twice, and we turned him down twice.
Why was that?
And, I kept saying, this is not interesting yet. No, this is not interesting yet. And he loves to tell the story, right? And so the third time he came to us, he finally came to us, and I was like, okay, I like this. Now you're on to something, right? So we invested a small check. I think it was $70,000.
What at the third time you liked, which made you invest in them?
Well, I think it was like he had finally sort of come up with an idea that I found to be scalable and to be different. He had the other two ideas were very different. And so he came with Gamify. It's called Gamify. And also Gamify has pivoted tremendously since then, but it was gamification and engagement of customers through gamification, et cetera. And now it's loyalty and all sorts of other things. But he's selling in Mexico, in Chile, in Argentina, in Brazil, right, from Palestine again. And so again, it's that power of, as you said earlier, right, the technology sort of removes borders and removes all of the constraints that we as Palestinians, and me being now a Palestinian living here, but meaning, it removes those barriers of checkpoints. It removes the barriers of all the trouble we have with imports and exports, because we have the internet and we can do anything with a computer now.
Right.
So that's really special. And I'd like to mention just one more. I know you said a couple, but I'll mention one more because I have to
Yeah.
talk about our female founders. We have Tawazun, which is the first Arabic meditation app. So like Calm or Headspace, but it's in Arabic and it's tailored to an Arab audience. And this company has been featured by Apple several times. It's been featured. It was chosen by Amazon Alexa during their launch of Amazon Alexa in the MENA region in Saudi and the UAE. So when you want to meditate in Arabic with Alexa, they bring up Tawazun meditations. So also doing really, really well, and a female founder. So we're 40% of our founders are women, and that's something that I'm really very proud of.
Yeah, I mean, that's so good to hear that, women are also coming up in a region where there are so many things happening and going on. But how are you encouraging more women to join in entrepreneurship? Do you, as a fund, also take some mentoring sessions or training programs for women?
Yeah. So yes. So we, I think part of it, a big part of it, and I will toot my own horn here, is that we have a woman around the decision-making table. I think that is incredibly important to, if you want to fund more women, you have to include women in your fund.
Yeah.
I think that that's a no-brainer, because one, women feel more comfortable approaching other women. Two, we understand a lot of the products that women are focusing on. I mean, yes, of course, we see women, creating products for men, and of course that exists.
Yeah.
But typically, if you look at the types of companies that women are founding, it's, for kids, education, for women. And so, for example, I have a company called 360 Moms that is focused on women, on selling to women, et cetera. It's it's support, it's content, it's all of these different things. And, she presented to a group of male investors the other day, and it said, your market isn't big enough. How can half of the population not be big enough as a market, right? So, it's these sorts of things that I think we understand some of these issues better. And we also, as investors, and, we have a better line of access to more female founders. We are also taking very concrete steps to invest in more women and to help our companies hire more women. And so we're working, for example, in a week, we have the first female hackathon in Palestine, all females. So no males are allowed to apply, and no males will be part of it. So all our mentors are women, all our judges will be women, all our organizers are women, and every single participant will be women. And so we're getting men saying, well, why can't we participate? But honestly, we're trying to just sort of make a statement. Let's see what happens. It's never been done before. Let's see what type of products women can build, and what can happen of this type of events as well.
Yeah, but why do you think, like, why do we need such a segregation in the first place? I know there is
Yeah.
less representation and there is some support that women need, but how did that historically come about, if I were to ask you on that?
Look, I think it's absolutely sort of human nature to invest in people that you understand, right? And so, for example, if you look at even the US and in VC in the West, what ends up happening is it's the same people keep getting funded, right? And it's the same sort of network. So what we're trying to do here is sort of disrupt that network. Is, how can we attract women to think about their needs and think about products that are targeting them? And also it's turning on its head, where, how many times have you gone to a conference and it's all an all male panel? How many times have you gone to a hackathon and all the judges are males, right? We're really trying, we're uh, very intentionally seeking out women who can be part of this. As I said, it's a test. And it's not done because we don't think men can understand women, and it's not done because we want to exclude men. I think what we're trying to do is test something. Maybe women will be more comfortable. Maybe women will come up with ideas that they wouldn't if they were in a group of male with males. Let's see. I can report back in 2 weeks and see how it went. And we also wanted to see how it was received, right? So
Yeah,
for
so is
sure.
this like one of the first events that you're having?
So no, definitely not. But it's a first that is solely focused on women.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, we're constantly sponsoring and taking part in local events. But again, this is the first time that we're doing it like this.
Yeah, it's very interesting because we are also planning to do that across the globe with chapter heads. And we can talk about it later on after the interview as to how we can have some of the women who are interested to volunteer for our organization and have some events there in Palestine, because we have all the resources and the network to do this in different regions, because we can't specifically go travel to places and arrange ourselves, right? So a local person would know the local area the best. So it's
Yeah, for sure. Let's
of
talk.
that. Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect.
Cool. And there's also this apprehension that women are very afraid of being judged as someone who's asking stupid questions when there are men around. But if there are so many women around, they're like open, very open in terms of asking, in terms of answering, and in terms of just being themselves. So why is that apprehension present in, most of the women minds?
This is a recorded interview, so I have to be a bit careful, right? But I think that um, we, I think women tend to really question ourselves and our abilities. I think imposter syndrome is so common among us. I think that, there's so much research, for example, that when a woman is looking at a job description and they're wanting to apply to a job description, they want to tick every single one of those, expectations or, job requirements, versus a man who was perfectly fine with not meeting all of them and just seeing what happens. And I see that in our founders too, by the way, where our female founders want to have all of the answers and all the information before making decisions, which leads to them making decisions slowly sometimes,
Yeah.
where they need to move faster and they need to test things, even if they're not going to work and they're afraid to lose money and make a mistake. I think a lot of it is also that there are so few of us that there's a lot of pressure on us, right? There's a lot of pressure on us to be perfect and to not make mistakes. For example, just it's a dumb example, but going to a conference, right? The amount of work that a woman has to put in to planning to go to a conference. What shoes, what outfit? Did somebody see this outfit before? Going to do our nails and our hair and our eyebrows. It's all of it has to be prepared versus my partner who throws on, 2 blue suits and, 5 white shirts and, he can wear the same shoes. And that is just that level of intensity, even to just be part of a panel and attend an event and jump on a call where you're recorded. It's just, there's a lot more expectation placed on a woman. And I don't know if we do it to ourselves. I don't know if I wore the same blue suit, if, the men around the table would notice, right? But it's there, and it's a societal expectation, and it's something that we deal with. So I think that as we see more women rise, and as we see more women in positions of control, and we start changing the dynamic, then maybe we can start making changes also on all of these little details, right? Let's see. It's changing slowly, unfortunately.
Yeah, since we're on this topic of how women are being perceived and how women think of themselves, let's also speak of the other part, because whenever a woman wants to be ambitious and confident, they're told that your targets are too high to achieve. For example, if a man speaks about building $100, 100 crore company, for example,
Yeah.
investors would be like, wow, that's a really good target and you should go for it. But if a makes the same statement, people would be like, are you really sure of what you're doing? And tell us
Yeah.
exactly how will you do that? So how is
Right.
it that the perception can be changed at the other end of the spectrum? And why is it that there is so much of unconscious gender bias prevailing?
Yeah. For sure. And it's also women investors that do this, by the way. It's I don't remember who did the study that you're mentioning, but it's both female and male investors. And it's sort of this the opportunity versus what challenges are you going to have in this outview. I think that there's some um suggestions by the authors where it's sort of women have to keep pivoting it back and just have to keep focusing on the opportunity, etc. um I've definitely seen it. I think as investors and decision makers, we also have to work on our biases and be very conscious of that. I think that I'm part of the Kaufman Fellows, and we did a lot of work on this, on sort of the unconscious bias that we have as investors. And again, in the end, we're human, right? And what can help with that is diversity around the decision makers. It's not only women. I don't only mean women, right? For example, in the US, you need racial diversity around the table. You need here in Palestine, you need people from different parts of Palestine around the team. That where then the unconscious bias is diminished by the fact that you have different voices around the table. And I think that's very important.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that we can do. I think definitely as investors, we just have to constantly keep also asking ourselves, am I missing opportunities because of my biases? It's easier in a place like Palestine because we don't have, that diversity. Honestly, there's Palestinians, but again, when you're looking at a country like the US or Europe, you have to have diversity around the table. It's the only way that you're going to reduce that.
Yeah, speaking on that front, how is your investment committee structured? What kind of diversity do you have at your fund? And what is the leadership style that you go about?
Yeah. Yeah, so maybe thinking about diversity as it stands with Palestine, right? And so, for example, on our management team, it's my co-managing partner Habib and I. So male, female, 50%. He is from what is called 48. So he is a Palestinian with Israeli citizenship. He lives in Israel. Um, I am actually not Palestinian. I'm Mexican American, married to a Palestinian from the West Bank, and I live in the West Bank. So, Palestine is divided in these areas, right? So you have the West Bank, Gaza, East Jerusalem, Palestinians in Israel, Palestinians in the diaspora, and that's how we're divided. And so it's making sure for us that we also have visibility on all of these different Palestinian communities. And so that we help with, our team, our partnerships, our funders, our investors themselves who are in the diaspora. So our investment committee then is Habib, myself. Then we have our chairman, Hashim Shawa, who is also in the West Bank, but from Gaza. Then we have also a Palestinian who is in London, who is helping with our tech. He's a tech background. His name is Amir. We have Rim Khouri, who is Palestinian in Jordan and a woman. And so she also has sort of the vision and the insights into what's happening outside of Palestine in the region. So that's our IC. And as I said, then we're even more broadened by our partnerships with accelerators and incubators in the country, and with our LPs.
Got it. And answering the second part of the question as to how is your personal leadership style like for coaching founders and funding them?
Okay, we're actually doing a bit of work on this. So I think that to I tend to lead from a position of empathy, and in a position of collaboration, which at times then leads to me having trouble addressing things that I might find conflicting, right? So I tend to avoid conflict. And so you can't do that when you're an investor. You need to have very difficult conversations with founders. And so, when I talk about sort of this constant development and constant questioning, this is something that I personally am working very hard on. What is it that what am I not comfortable with and that I need to work on? One of those is having difficult conversations. So I'm working on that. I have a coach, et cetera. We're, sort of as a team also working on it. And, I think that I am a person that really likes to sort of take into account the entire room, right? So for example, when we're talking with a company, it's making sure that, the founders are heard, that they know that they have a partner with us. And I need to make sure that they understand that I'm in this for the long term, right? That I have their backs and that I need to know if something is not going well, because then I can help address it. So that's the way I approach things, is really sort of getting to know the human behind the companies, the humans behind the companies, and knowing what's happening in their lives beyond their companies.
Yeah, on that empathy front, I think there's a debate around, a founder becoming a VC versus just a investment banking professional becoming a VC, because both ways it's very different the way you speak to other founders and help them out. So are you also a believer of the fact that it really helps you as a venture capital when you have a past entrepreneurial track record?
I agree with that. I think definitely, we would like to get more people with entrepreneurial experience on our team, because yes, I mean I think of myself, sort of, Ibtikar is very much like a startup. We started small. We started with a few investors. We now have a bigger fund, and we're constantly fundraising. And we also have to respond to our investors. And I was a first-time investor with Fund One, so there was a lot that is similar. However, there's a lot that our founders are facing, including dealing with us, that I think, having a former founder on our team would be very helpful,
Yeah.
both for coaching them, but also to help us maybe see some of what we might be missing.
Right. But since you're the only fund in Palestine, how did you attract your limited partners to invest into the fund and gain their confidence? How was the
Yeah.
fundraising journey for you?
So I think so with Fund One, we had two very well-known Palestinian businessmen, Zahi Khouri and Hashim Shawa. And having them on board as champions of the fund really helped with the fundraise. One, they had put skin in the game, they had invested in themselves, but they also opened up their network. And I think that a lot of our first investors trusted us because Hashim was involved or because Zahi was involved. And I think that's very helpful to have that champion on board. So that was Fund One, the first close. The second close, then we were able to bring in development finance institutions. So the IFC, the International Finance Corporation, the Dutch Good Growth Fund, which is a Dutch fund of funds of the government. Then those investors have, the majority of them, like say 95% have followed us into Fund Two and actually increased their commitments to Fund Two. So Fund Two is much bigger. It's 3 times the size of Fund One, the target. And so that's been very helpful. And I think they've seen sort of the professionalism, the results, even though we don't have an exit yet from Fund One. We can show signs of success in our companies, and I think that's definitely helped.
Yeah, surely that will happen soon. But yeah. Yeah, but like you mentioned that you consider yourself also as one of the startups, and in
Yeah.
any startup, marketing is one of the biggest go-to market strategies. So how is it that you introduced your fund in the Palestinian region and told founders that, okay, here we are for you, we're here to give you capital. So how did the marketing plan go through?
It's been viral, viral and organic. So look, I think that it's unfortunate that we're the only fund, because in a sense, one, as I said, this is a people to people business, right? And so there are opportunities that Habib and I will not see, or we may not sort of invest in, and those companies could do very well. And so they need somebody that to invest in them, for sure. And so that's one. But certainly I think that you know, sorry, I totally lost track of my thoughts. Uh, can you help me? Will we be able to slice this interview a bit, or are they?
Yeah, sure. You were talking
Remind
about,
me of the question, Radhika, please.
I spoke of the fact that how did you do your marketing of the fund? How
Oh,
did
the marketing, yes, viral and organic.
Yes.
Right. So, you know, we take part in events. We certainly have a presence on social media, but you know, one thing that I am very conscious of is I want our success to speak. And you know, there is a lot of back and forth on this, right? Like, should, you know, we can, for example, be making posts about every meeting that we have, and you know, every little thing that we do. But I really am actually putting my head down a bit, and because I want to be able to say, here is our success, and that let that do the speaking. And so we actually are quite quiet on social media, and we're quite quiet in media. We're very careful with what we announce, because again, VC is so high risk, and we can invest in a company and anything can happen. For example, COVID, right? And it's doing so well, and then all of a sudden it's not. And so it is a business that one day you might be doing really well and ready to exit, and the next day you may have lost it all. So in a country and in a society that is already risk averse and that is already looking at, you know, how many of our companies are succeeding, then we have to be very careful with what we announce. So, you know, we're entrepreneurs know about this about us. We make sure of that again through our communications and our events and our participation and all of that. But you know, in the sense of, are we sort of all over the place? I don't think we are. And that's a very conscious decision.
Yeah, that's how when you take baby steps, you arrive at something good enough for you. But since you get most of the women founders also applying to us, how is their pitch different from men? Because the way women also speak about themselves is very different. They don't like to speak more of their achievements or about their vision. You know, what they will speak about is their present goals achieved. And that
Yeah.
sometimes also puts off investors' interest, you know. They're like, but what is your bigger picture? We can't see it. And men sometimes tend to go the other way around. They'll speak of the vision and then come to what they're doing, which instills more sense of confidence. So is that
Yeah.
the pattern you've been observing in women founders?
Yeah, for sure. And as I was saying earlier, you know, one, they tend to take decisions a bit slower, and they want all the information perfectly aligned and all of that before they take decisions. And so that's led to some slower growth, honestly. And so I'm working with them to just really just try anything, and you know, break things, right? That isn't that a thing in VC? Just go out and break things. So go out and break this, even if you lose some money. I want to make sure, I want to see if it works. And the only way to do that is to test and spend money on it. So that's one. Definitely when they come to pitch up to us, it's a slower pitch. I have seen this. What they do is they come to us and they sort of test the waters, right? So they start talking to us before they need investment, and they start talking to us for advice. And so it's not, you know, here's our application and we're ready to receive $500,000 in funding. No, it's, you know, what do you think of this? And you know, where I'm working on this. So, you know, what do you think of it? Can you know, can you make introductions? Can you help me with this? And so it's a much slower pitch. We get to know them in a longer time period. Which, you know, now that I'm thinking about it, I wonder how that does when they're raising larger amounts of money with us, because they've struggled. Because maybe somebody doesn't have the time to get to know them. And when you're when you have 20 opportunities in front of you, you're going to invest in the best ones that you see now, right? Versus getting to know a founder in a slow process. So yeah, that's sort of what I've seen.
Got it. And just I read about in one of your articles that, staying and living in Palestine sometimes can become challenging, especially for your kids, because there are so many things happening around. And I read somewhere that you had to actually protect your son from watching the news where his classmate's father was arrested by the police.
Yeah.
So, how is it really that you have to navigate through these kind of storms and, tell your heart that it's all going to be fine and take care of your children at the same time?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's as a mother, and as a human, it is a difficult place to live in. We face challenges that other places don't, and stress levels that certainly other places don't. I think that it takes, I've done some personality tests, and I remember one very keenly because again it was Kaufman, and it was after our class had gotten to know each other, and they know I'm here, etc. They know some of the challenges I faced, and what came out was that I'm driven by justice. That it's one of the key drivers of me as a person. And so they all sort of started laughing because all of them were driven by something else completely different, maybe ego, maybe success, etc. And they're like, while this makes complete sense, they just laughed, right? Because here you are in Palestine doing what you're doing, right? Where you could be doing it anywhere else. And so I definitely am here for reasons larger than wanting to make money off of a company that I invested in Ibtikar. And that's definitely, I'm here for more than that. It is difficult. I can't lie about it. Would it be much easier if I lived in the US or Dubai? For sure. But I also see the value in what I'm doing and the impact, and so that's why we're here. And I hope that, again, sort of the success that we have makes such a big difference. And that my children can see sort of that sacrifice and the reason why we made that sacrifice.
Yeah, I mean, it's a long-term play, and patience is something that will unlock some greater possibilities, going
Yeah.
further. But, with this, we'll move to the rapid fire round of
Yeah.
the interview, where I'll ask you about your fund, starting with the first question as to whosoever maybe in Palestine may be watching this interview and has not heard about Ibtikar right now. How would you describe to them? What are the check sizes you offer? At what stage do you come in, and which sectors do you, want to invest into?
Yes. So we are typically the first institutional check. We invest early. We're sector agnostic, so we can invest in anything that's web and mobile based, tech enabled. So sectors are anything you can think of that you can build an app or a website with. Average ticket size for fund two will be between $400,000 and $500,000. And we can invest over several rounds in one company. So basically, we can continue through Series A of those companies.
Got it. And have you discovered investing outside Palestine or only the region specifically for now?
So we can invest in Palestinian founders anywhere in the MENA region. So if you are a Palestinian founder that lives in Dubai and are working on something really great, we can invest in that company. So anywhere in MENA.
Got it. And what are some of the common mistakes that you've observed in these early stage entrepreneurs?
Common mistakes. Okay, so look, I don't think it's a mistake. I think it's a product of being in Palestine and having limited funding options. I think that we tend to grow much slower. And so our founders are very careful with money, which means that, for example, Mashweiser, the company I mentioned first, has made millions of dollars in revenue, but has only raised $800,000 in funding. $800,000 in funding in the US would have gotten you maybe 6 months, right? And so I think that while there's some positives to that, but there's also, that if he had gotten the types of investments that we see elsewhere, and the level of funding that we see elsewhere, he probably could have grown much faster. They could have grown much faster. So that's one. I think that other mistakes that I've seen in our founders, let me think. Maybe not trying things fast enough. And again, this goes back to the woman, but also some of the men. I think sometimes you need to just keep trying different things, and before sort of you give up on something, right? So that maybe getting rid of some of the assumptions that we start with, for a company or a market, and just making sure that you validate all those things. Again, we're early, so it's a very different type of problems that we see.
Yeah. And which was one most interesting pitch that you heard from any founders that you've come across in these years?
The most interesting pitch.
Yeah, which is like stuck to your head till now.
There's one that sticks in our head, and Habib and I had, not because it was interesting, but because we see this character over and over. And it's the character where you've built something and you're so in love with it and you're so engrossed in it that you're not able to see its faults. And so, for example, this particular pitch, this guy just was so in love with it that then when we asked him questions, he just couldn't deal with it. Couldn't see how we were looking at the product and understand that maybe he was building it in a way that wasn't going to be received well by everyone. Sure, as I said, we have biases. We're human, right? So maybe Habib and I were seeing something and the rest of the world was seeing something else. And this is why we need more investors, right? Because maybe he would have gotten funded otherwise. Yeah. But for us, this product just didn't make sense. And he just was so combative about it. It also showed, by the way, when you're that combative, we're looking for people that we can work with in the long term. There are going to be so many problems that you face in the 6-7 years that we're with you in a relationship, that we need to be able to see that when we give you feedback, it's going to be received in a way that maybe you might disagree, but take that feedback, see where we're trying to come from. It also is a lot about relationships in this business.
Yeah, I think sometimes the founders also make this mistake of being too close to the mirror and not going away from it to look at the bigger picture and the full picture. And maybe that's where they think that they have reached to the stars and they can walk on waters. The collaboration goes missing, and that's where the failing starts. But it's something very important for everyone to learn from.
Yeah. And equally, we were talking about having diversity among decision making. I think it's sorry. Equally important for founders to be surrounded by diversity, right? If it's just one founder, you don't have somebody to really talk to think through things, etc. You're going to miss things. And so it's important to build that team of founders, that team of C-level employees around you that can help you see things that you might be missing and question decisions that you might be making.
Yeah, but speaking of that talent, how is it that founders hire in Palestine? Is it easier for them, difficult for them? How do they find the right kind of people to hire in your region?
Yeah. So look, we have a great tech talent in Palestine, and that's one of the opportunities that we see with VC. So tech talent is great. We're having a few more problems with marketing talent. This is goes back to the occupation and, being able to bring in professors that are sort of not top notch, but have the most recent experience. But so we're doing things to really attract maybe some regional marketing people that can train our locals. We're doing a lot of different things in that space. But again, we're now borderless, right? So our companies can really hire from anywhere. And that's what's been happening.
Got it. And it's actually an example to every founder in any country that how you can also spread your wings across the globe and move beyond your region. So, what are some of the things that you've observed in the founders made them go beyond their borders?
One, again, is a small market, right? So I think as Palestinians, we need to look bigger, think bigger early on. Um, but definitely, I mean, when it comes to hiring, it's necessity, right? Where can we find the right people? Where can I find the right expertise for my company? And so they're doing that. But in terms of market, certainly, where can I see opportunity? Where can I spread my wings?
Got it. And if you've invested in a portfolio company, what are some of the red flags that you cannot take? And because sometimes with capital, with everything in place, a founder just doesn't listen to the investors, like you mentioned before. So, what are some of those red flags that just won't work for you?
Yeah, uh, for sure. It's disrespect. Um, it's for example, you can tell sometimes when uh how a founder responds to maybe some of our junior staff. I've had companies that I say no to, and then they go to Habib because they think he's higher than me in terms of decision making. And so, that is certainly do not do that. I've had companies where maybe I'm super busy and it takes me a while to get back to them, and they'll put it on social media. Don't do that either. Don't burn that bridge, contact me, find a different way. But certainly don't go public and embarrass me. That's not the right way to do it. I think that again, it's about being open to other opinions. We we will do background checks on founders to see how they work with people, uh, and see, because they're going to manage people and they're going to have to raise money. So there's a lot more to being a founder than just having a great product, right? And so again, is have you surrounded yourself with people and other team members who can bridge some of those gaps, who can fill some of those gaps? And so, well-rounded teams, etc.
Yeah, there's also this concept of founder market fit, not just product market fit. So that
Exactly.
really summarizes your point as to why that's important. And why is it that some of the startups, after having reached the peak, after doing everything right, sometimes fail? What really goes wrong? Have you ever witnessed it in your career trajectory so far that a startup who was doing so well, founders were great, collaborative, yet it didn't fly?
Yeah, absolutely. I think sometimes our companies have been too early to go to the market. The market wasn't ready. I think that again, maybe a founder is really great at a product, is really great at tech, really great at marketing, but really, really is horrible at fundraising. Um, that if you can't raise money, you're not going to continue, right? Unless you got to a place where you can be sustainable. Um, I've seen founder conflict where they just can't continue together. Um, what else have I seen? Reasons why companies have failed. And just again, it is market fit. And so if you're building a product that the market doesn't want, isn't ready for, and doesn't understand, then it's not going to work. And you can pivot and do different things, but in the end, I think the majority of our companies are going to fail, and I think we have that mindset. We have to communicate that to the community, and to some of our investors. And when we're pitching Ibtikar, it's really understanding, look, this is a long-term risky investment, but we are confident that we're going to be able to find a few companies that are going to make it so big that it'll outweigh the losses.
Yeah, yeah, that's how any VC firm functions. Like, for example, in Australia, Canva, gave so much returns to some of the funds that they just retired. They were like, okay, let's wind up. Yeah, we've gotten all the returns we would have wanted in our
Yeah,
years. Yeah, so
exactly.
that's the case. But how is the hiring strategy at your fund? How do you hire people? What kind of pedigree do you look for? And is hiring
Yeah,
difficult for you yourself also in Palestine sometimes?
yeah. So I just have to let you know, I can maybe, do we have a lot more questions?
No, just this last.
The last one. Okay. So how do we expand? So we've actually for a long time, we're only a team of three. So Habib and I as partners, and then our CFO in residence, Reem. And now we with Fund Two, because we're a bit bigger, we can afford more salaries. So we hired two more people, Dana and who is our operations person, and Mohammed, who is portfolio. And we have, if we get to a target of 25 million, which we're hopeful we will, then we'll have an investment manager. So we're a small team that is doing a lot.
Yeah, lean and a bigger power packed team in itself, I would say, because three people is, I've just unheard of the number, yet y'all are doing so much. It means that it really has something in it. And I really urge people who are listening in your region to come and apply to you, because funding from you guys would really help them get up and get going. But thanks a lot. With that, we come to the end of the interview.
Thanks so
Really love
much.
speaking with you and learning about your journey. It's definitely difficult to live in an area like Palestine, but really happy to see how much you as a women leader are doing there.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time.